Hello and welcome to part 6. So in the last video we already had the game running, we had the blocks falling and everything. Now it would be really nice to be able to press down and also drop the block so that way we don't have to wait forever for the block to fall. So we'll go ahead and do that in this video. So let's go ahead and open the Tetris player, and now let's go to input, and we haven't added it yet. So let's go ahead and add the input action, move block down, and let's go ahead and get can input. We'll get a branch from that, make sure it's true. So now when we press down, we want to go ahead and take the fall timer. Before we do that, let's go ahead and add a variable and we'll call it quick fall speed, and we need to change this to be a float. In my other project, I set it to 0.3, so I'm just going to go with that. And now let's go ahead and look for set timer by function name. We'll check looping, and we'll plug in a quick fall speed, and the function name will just be update block fall. And before we test it, I actually realized something, that if you have it on 0.3 and you play it, you won't really see much of a difference. That's because fall speed is a little too quick, so I'll change it to 1. I'm going to set this back to 0.3 because I was testing on 0.1. So now it's falling pretty slow, so if we press down, it'll fall much faster. We can definitely test that and set it to 0.1, so we can make sure that it's working. So if we do, yeah, it falls really fast. With that done, if you release the button, it's just going to keep falling. But there is another problem, is that if you press it and release the button, it still falls really quickly. So we can change that. We can move this up, and on the next one we'll go ahead, we'll copy and paste this. I'm going to go ahead and straighten this out a little bit so it looks a little nicer. And instead of quick fall, we're just going to set it back to be the fall speed. So if I press down and let go, it instantly slows down, and I press it again, it speeds up. So we already have it. And I should mention, we don't really need check for the can input as of right now. I'm pretty sure we don't have to do that. I don't have that in my original project, so I'm pretty sure. But I might wind up coming back to this. But there is one bug, and that's if you press down to let this fall all the way down, and the next block that spawns, if you press down, nothing happens. It doesn't fast fall or anything. And on top of that, there's one other problem that we have, is that if you repeatedly press down, you mash down, it doesn't move. It stops, and you have to wait, and then it'll start falling again. So we'll go ahead. We'll be fixing that later on in the video. But for now, let's go ahead and fix the problem with the second block that spawns in. So what the problem is we have this can input, which is allow input, and when we lock the block, we are disabling input, and we need to re-enable it after the next block spawns. So when we go to prepare next block, so this will be after the animation, and we add a block, and the game is not over, we'll go ahead and set allow input back to true. I'll compile and save. And now if we play and we press down, fast falls, and the next block that spawns, we can now make it fast fall as well. So one thing that I do like is that if I'm still holding down, I would like the next block to also start falling quickly. So after the block is locked in place, I'm still holding down, but the next block that's spawning in isn't fast falling. So we can do this. This is totally up to you. You don't have to do this if that's your preference or not. But we're going to go ahead and add a branch here, and we'll connect false to just set the timer regularly. But we want to check and see if an input is down. Now, if you go into your project settings, so we have from the drop block, the two inputs are X and gamepad face button left. So we could do the get player controller, and then just, is input key down, and then we'll set it to, I had it on X. Did I have it on X? Actually, no, I was looking at the wrong one. Actually, it was move block down. It was down in gamepad gamepad D-pad down. Sorry about that. But if we set that to down, so that's what we had, and then we just did a branch if it was true, and we copy and paste this. I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and I'm going to change fall speed to quick fall speed. But the problem with this is that if you go and you change this, move block down, let's say, so if you went and you change this from down to be some other key input, like maybe you would want it to be S or something, you have to come in here and change this as well. So what we could do, so that way we won't have to do that, is we can do get input settings and type in the action name, which is move block down. So I'm just going to copy this and just paste it over here. And we could do a get a copy, break it, and we have the key here. So we can check and see if it's down. So I'm going to kind of just have two get inputs. You could put this in a loop. You know, as a matter of fact, we'll go ahead and we'll do it in a loop. Just in case for some reason you want to add multiple keys, or even if you want to have some kind of input like this in different projects. So you could just do a for loop, the for each loop. I'll go ahead and move this out of the way for now. We'll break it, and I'm only going to have the key, and so we'll just do is key down. It might not show up. You have to get the player controller, and then is key down. So just plug that in. And you know what? Let's go ahead and put this inside of a function just to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to just press F to make it into a function, or collapse it into a function. And I'm going to name it key still down, and I'm going to make it pure. And as an output, we're just going to have a boolean. And I'm just going to name it value. And I'll get to the function in a second, but let's go ahead and clean this up for now. Now, before we get into this function, there is one thing I would like to say, is that you don't have to use a branch like this and then copy this twice. You could just have a select float, if I can spell it. So you could just use a select float and do it that way, but I'm just going to do it like this. I'm pretty sure that a branch, it's slightly more faster to do it this way, but it's up to you. You can do it that way and make it a little nicer and cleaner. But let's go into this function. So we'll go ahead and go into this function, and we'll use a for loop, and we'll just check and see if the key is down. If it is down, we're just going to return true. We're going to instantly return true. But if we go through all the action mappings and none of them, if all of them are false, then we will return false. And you have to put these return nodes, by the way. This is very important. Otherwise, it'll just always return false. So now that we have that, if we go back and play it, and I hold down, I'm still holding down, the next one that falls will also keep fast falling. And again, that's completely up to you if you want to do that. So let me clean this up a little bit. So before we continue, let's go ahead and change the quick fall speed to be 0.03, and the fall speed, instead of 1, I'm going to set it to be like 0.8, just so it's a little bit quicker, so that way when we're testing this out more, we don't have to wait as long. And now that we change the speeds, if you repeatedly press down, it still falls down. However, if you press it really fast, like every other couple frames, it'll freeze in place. But I don't think a human can do that, so I'm not gonna go any further than that. But if you did want to fix that, you could go back into input, and you could have this do once until after they've let go for a short time. So set a timer, and then it resets it, and that's that way they can't do that. But as long as you have these at a pretty small value, they shouldn't be able, a player should not be able to mash down and have the block freeze in place. Okay, so now for the next thing that we want to do is the drop block, where it instantly teleports down to the bottom. So let's go back to our input. I'm going to go ahead and exit these out, and let's search for drop block, or whatever you called it. So we need to add another variable, and it needs to be a boolean called allow drop. The reason is that when we do the drop block, if the animation is playing and they press it again, the game could crash, at least the method that I'm going to use. Obviously, there's thousands of ways you could approach this and do it your way, but this is how I'm doing it, so we're going to need this variable. And let's go ahead and, for organization purposes, let's make a function called handle drop block. And let's get a branch, and let's use an end, because we're going to need to check a couple of conditions here. So the first one, I'm going to default it to true, but we will be coming back to this, hopefully. So first one is allow drop block, and the next one is game over. Now don't just plug game over in, you need to use the not boolean, otherwise you'll never be able to drop the block unless the game is over. Now we also need to take the fall timer and clear it. After we've done that, we need to go to allow input and turn that off, because we don't want the player to be moving the block while it's in that animation. It'll break the game. And we also need to set allow drop to false. And before I forget, let's default this to true. Now we need to store, we're going to use a timeline to animate it, so we need to store the location. So let's make another variable, and we're going to name it drop start location, and this needs to be a vector, and we'll plug that in, and we need to get the current block and get the actor location. And let's go ahead and make a local variable called hit, and we'll put the _L so that way we know that it's in a function. Turn that to a boolean. So we'll get the current block, and we'll get grid data as array, and let's just promote this to a local variable, and we'll just call it block data _L. We'll go ahead and remove this right now. I was just as a shortcut. So we'll take this and we'll do a for each loop on it, and we'll break this, and we're going to get the point. We'll break that as well, unhide that to kind of clean it up. And now we're moving the column down by 1. So we're basically pretending that the block is being moved down by 1. So we're going to add 1 to it, and then we're going to use the place filled function, and we'll just split this. We'll plug in point column and point row, and we'll do a switch on this. And we're only really checking for 2 things, is that if it's taken or we hit the floor. And if either of those are true, we're going to set the hit to be true. So plug both of those in. So now after that, from the completed, we'll take another branch and we'll check and see if we hit anything. We'll start with the first one. If we did hit something, so either the floor or another block, that means that the drop should stop. We need to go ahead and duplicate drop start location. So we'll duplicate that, and instead of start, we're going to say end, and we'll promote that to a variable, and we'll go ahead and we'll copy the current block location once again, and we'll paste it in. Let's go ahead and we'll make a new graph, and we're going to call it animation, and let's make a custom event called drop animation, drop block anim, and we'll leave it alone for right now. We'll come back to it in a second, and we're just going to call that function drop block animation, and then we'll just return. However, then we're going to need to keep moving it down by 1 and keep testing until we do hit something. Just to prevent errors, we're just going to make sure this is valid, and I'm kind of only doing this because this is in my original project, so I might have did this because just random pending kill errors or something like that, so I'm going to just leave it in. You might not have to do this, but so now after that happens, we'll take the current block again and call push down 1, and by 1 step. We don't make sure it's 1 step. If you do more than that, then it's probably not going to work right. And then after that's done, we need to reset the block data array. So once again, we'll get the current block data, and then we'll get grid data as array. We'll plug that in and leave skip center as false. We don't want that to be true. Now after that's complete, now as of right now it wouldn't work, it would just stop. Well, we need to loop this back around onto the loop again. So after you've looped it back around, let me go ahead and straighten this out so it looks a little nicer. So now that we have that taken care of, before we forget, let's go ahead and add handle drop block to the input. So I go back and press play, and when I press X, it teleports all the way down, but the game kind of stops. Nothing else happens. That's because we haven't told it to do anything. So as of right now, we're just waiting until it returns, and then nothing happens. We just call this function and nothing happens. So let's go to the animation that we made, drop block animation, and let's create a timeline. So drop block, and I always put TL for timeline. And from play, let's move it to play from start. And we'll open the timeline up, and we'll create a float. And I'm just going to call it alpha. That's what I always call it. And we'll add 2 key points, and you can hold shift and click to add it. And the first one is going to be 0. The value is going to be 0. And the second one, the value will be 1. Now the time is up to you. This is how quickly it's going to fall. I'm going to set it to be 0.2. So we'll compile and save. You can set this to be whatever you want. You could set it, if you set it to 0.1, it'll fall faster, or you can make it slower if you would like to do that. If you don't want to have an animation, you want it to just instantly drop. Well, we're going to do some logic from finished, so you would, instead of putting this timeline, you just plug that in, and it should work just fine. So we could take the update, and we'll do set actor location, and we'll get a lerp vector, and we'll plug this in. We're going to take the drop start location as A, and the drop in location as B, and then after it's finished, we're going to call the lock block function, and then we'll allow input. We'll set that to be true. Now you'll notice I made this mistake. You need to plug in current block as the actor, otherwise it won't work. And I was kind of stuck for a while figuring out what was going on. But anyway, if I press X, it plays this animation, and it goes down. And it has the dropping animation. And one more thing, you might have noticed that it took a while before the animation played. Like it should be about 5 seconds. Yeah, there it is. You need to go into use last keyframe, and just to be safe, I'm going to change the length to 0.2. You probably don't have to do that, but I always do that just to be safe. So this time if we do it, it'll lock it, and the next one will fall, and we can put it anywhere we want. And also after allow input, you need to also set allow drop to be true, otherwise it won't work. So now we can test it. We can keep pressing X, and the blocks will keep falling really quickly, and while it's falling, you can still move to the left and the right for some reason. And we also need to go back and put allow input. As long as the input is true, you can do it as well. Let's not forget that. So you'll notice this bug where if you press play and you press X and you quickly press left or to the right, the block will move over one. And this is why I was saying to have the debug, because this is very helpful. I might have completely missed this, and we would have had a bunch of bugs in the game. But the problem is, we forgot, well, I guess I forgot, to put the can input when you're pressing left or right. So we need to put that. So just add a branch and then look for the can input, plug that in. So after you've added that, now if we press play and press X and quickly press left or right, that won't happen anymore. So we fixed that problem. So thank you for watching. I'm going to end the video here. But before I do that, I would like to mention that I have a Patreon and a PayPal set up. So if you'd like to donate to me to help me fund projects and everything, that'd be great. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope everyone stays safe, and I will see you in the next video.